So these deep decarbonization policies, they provide the incentive to act today.
Been doing some digging. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. I've been sniffing around and I found something here that's very interesting. We're talking about the World Bank. We're talking about Canadian tax dollars going there with no trace of who got these dollars. We're talking billions of dollars. With a lot of these stories I'm posting, I often get tips. That's not the case in this one, but I often get tips in my email. You guys are sending me all sorts of stuff, which is amazing. Sometimes people give me websites with time codes. Sometimes there's a sentence pointing me towards something. Sometimes it's only a few words saying like, look this up. This was the case with that Jared Kushner, Donald Trump, Qatar video I just did. But this video is just the case of me looking for one thing and finding another. Today I'm breaking down Global Affairs Canada, relationship with the World Bank, and how there is no trail to this money. This money could have been laundered. It is billions of dollars. Let's jump into this. I've been doing a bunch of digging here on the Global Affairs website. Initially, I was thinking that Brookfield would be getting a lot of solar projects. They do solar installations, and they'd be getting money from the Canadian government to go install all those projects in Africa. But I couldn't really find much with that. But after doing some more digging and remembering the World Bank, well, if you do search for the World Bank, this is what we get here. There's a lot. Now you're wondering, who's the World Bank again? Remember the video I made on this about 2 months ago? Oxfam, this is a company that investigated the World Bank. They found $41 billion of World Bank's climate spending effectively unaccounted for. They couldn't find that money. That money had vanished. So then that led me to do some more research, and basically I found that if you take all of these numbers and remove a few of them that aren't related here, like this food program one, a couple of these ones. So I did that. I put it into a chart. Here's all the millions of dollars where, there's tons of them, right? 50 million, 7 million, 15 million, 10 million, 1 million, $1 billion there, 256 million. These are all to World Bank. So there's a couple of different ones in here. We have IBRD, which is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which involves green projects. Okay, so this gets a little bit complicated. Let's try to break this down. So you'll see Canada ICF, which is Investment Funds Canada. So there's two different types. There's that, and then there's the IBRD. How this works is any of the IFC ones, these work with the World Bank, and essentially they put up money. IFC money gets matched. They put it in a collective pool at the World Bank, and then the World Bank divvies out that money to different companies, different countries to do green eco projects. Canada IFC works by leveraging public money from Canada to de-risk private investments in Africa, renewable energy projects. The IFC, as part of the World Bank, handles the actual investment decisions and execution using global network and expertise. The World Bank takes the money, charges an administration fee, divvies out the money. They don't profit directly off of that money. The thing is that Oxfam report, this one here, this found that they don't have bookkeeping for who got the money, which companies were hired, what the measurable outcomes were. Did they make it more eco and green? Did they reduce emissions? We don't even know the countries that these went to. And on top of that, they lost $41 billion. So I added all these up, all of them. Should note too, if you look at the date here, this is going all the way to the newest one. This goes back to Justin Trudeau's time, starting when Justin Trudeau got in. I added it up. It is $3.488 billion that we have sent to the World Bank, and the World Bank lost $41 billion. Unaccounted for, poof. Now, going back to what I just said, this Oxfam report found they don't know which companies were hired, so Brookfield could have been getting hired with this money as well. So Carney's company could be profiting, his stock value getting inflated because of this, and this money could just be laundered or stolen. We don't know. This net zero agenda is absolutely outrageous. U.S. government investigating it because it appears to be a big scam. It's taking advantage of companies, bullying them around, and not only that, they have the worst bookkeeping in the world. Convenient when you're dealing with billions of dollars, tens of billions. Something else to note here, Mark Carney's company, GFANZ, Glasgow Finance Alliance for Net Zero, has worked directly with the World Bank. Jumping over to the Oxfam report, this is bad news bears because this money isn't traceable. You can see here across the entire climate finance portfolio between 2017 and 2023, this difference amounts to 24.28 billion US dollars. This is a lot of money, to 41.32 billion. No information is available about what the new climate actions were supported, and each planned actions were cut. So they don't even know exactly how much money is missing because the bookkeeping is so bad. And they can't trace this because all the money is pooled from all the different countries. Thus, it is not traceable. This is a great way to launder money when you don't want someone looking around, sniffing around, finding where it's going. So here's a breakdown of all the money, fiscal year 2017 all the way to 2023. And you can see on the right side, so there's the low end, the low deviation, or high end. So this is $1.9 billion, 4.5 billion, 4.5, almost 6 billion, 6 billion, 8 billion, 9 billion, totaling 41 billion, or on the low end, totaling 24 billion US dollars. Some Mondo cash here. Once again, this money's pooled. Once it gets mixed in there and they divvy it out with no paper trail, we don't know what this money was being spent on. Was it given out to people? Handouts. Side note, completely unrelated. Where's Justin Trudeau now? We haven't heard from him in 2 weeks. Is he hanging out at the World Bank? Who knows? Who knows? With this level of information, it is impossible to determine whether the bank is truly stepping up its climate instruments. In our 2022 report, Unaccountable Accounting, the World Bank's unreliable climate financing reporting, we found that the bank's reported climate finance figures could not be confirmed using information disclosed by the bank. This lack of effective transparency and clear reporting meant we could not verify 40% or 7 billion of what the bank claimed as climate finance in just 2020. So with Mark Carney having his company investigated, GFANZ, by the American government, breaking down all those ties with Qatar and Jared Kushner, is there deals there? Does Mark Carney have evidence of that? Politically motivated for policy change? Does Mark Carney have leverage on Donald Trump? Well, it could go the other way as well. Donald Trump could have leverage on Mark Carney. And so let's just bring up here, as you can see, this is the Joffrey Eggstein Black Book, the redacted version. You can see Tanya and Robin Rotherwick. This is Mark Carney's sister-in-law. This is Mark Carney's wife's sister. As you can see, Mark Carney's wife, Diana, right there. 2 different numbers in this book. You know who else is in this book? Joffrey Eggstein's book? Donald Trump. That's right. Donald Trump is also in this book. I don't know if things went on. I don't know if either of them went to the island. Were they on the island at the same time? Does Trump have dirt on Mark Carney? I don't know. I have no idea. Does Donald Trump have a lot of information from the US government, especially they're investigating GFANZ Mark Carney? Yes. Is there dirt on both sides? There might be. Who knows? This seems very much like a powder keg about to explode, where if Pierre Poilievre get in, he will run a conservative government which will run in tandem with America, and both countries will prosper. There won't be this push to obliterate Canada and take our resources from America, which seems likely at this point, not militarily, but economically. We'll either get a bad deal from Mark Carney, or will there be a complete blowout because there's dirt one way or the other? Who knows? So the situation could involve both Brookfield and GFANZ, where both companies getting contracts from the government of Canada, the World Bank ones working with the World Bank. I don't know. There's no bookkeeping to show. As you can see here, this House of Representatives Judiciary Committee report that I brought up before, with Mark Carney's name in here 7 times, and his company GFANZ, you can see here, Net Zero, Asset Managers, etc., listed 94 times in here, being investigated by the Americans for antitrust laws. Is it such a far-fetched that maybe there's some shady dealing going on with the World Bank as well? I don't know. And just to bring the receipts so you guys can see here, World Bank names 15 leading CEOs and chairs to join the private sector investment lab. This coming from the World Bank Group, worldbank.org. This is their website. Co-chaired by Mark Carney, UN Special Envoy on Climate Action and Finance and co-chair of GFANZ, Shriti Vereda, chair of Prudential PLC. The lab will meet regularly and report directly to the World Bank President Ajay Banga, the World Bank Group leadership. It also says down here, Mark Carney, UN Special Envoy Climate Action Finance, co-chair of GFANZ. In order to address global challenges like climate change and poverty, we need new ways for the public and private sectors to work together. I guess Mark Carney is not that animated when he speaks. I always do that goofy voice when I read out this stuff. To catalyze investment speed at scale, particularly in developing countries. It is so bizarre that they keep pushing this on developing countries because it doesn't work in those countries. Every big society is built on oil and gas. It's like they intentionally want to impoverish these countries in Africa with all this net zero agenda.
Of the currently wretched, but still dangerously powerful liberals, one Mark Carney is one of the world's prime advocates of the insane inanities of net zero. He is a man who has planned in writing, not least in his best-selling book, Values, the complete destruction of the fossil fuel industry. Bye-bye, Alberta, if that's not bad enough. And it is. He's also simultaneously an advocate of the same post-national view of Canada defined by Trudeau Jr. and his moralistic minions. What are we, according to such good thinkers? Nothing. But if anything, the oppressive, patriarchal, white, supremacist, identityless, colonial settler state defined by the progressive ideologues in the think tanks and elite dining rooms in Eastern Canada and the protest encampments on the campuses of Canadian universities. None of this fills the MAGA crowd with admiration, in case it needs to be said. None of it bodes well either for the economy of Canada.
Yeah, and Mark Carney's net zero agenda here is going to further destroy this country. He has no problem with pipelines, but it's only pipelines that his former company is invested in the UAE. Now, we wouldn't want Canadian prosperity here. We need to do net zero and put Canadians through this experiment, which has proven to push 25% of people to skipping meals, record lineups at the food banks, and an economic catastrophe.
Doomed to replacement, according to Carney, by the hydrogen, solar, and wind power that either does not exist, that would be hydrogen, or that would doom Canadians to starve and freeze in the dark if it ever came to replace the reliable grid and transportation we also desperately depend on when it's 40 bloody below. We may, when arguing so expensively and incompetently with the Americans, continue to congratulate ourselves on our comparative righteousness. That diet will become even thinner gruel, however, in a future characterized by their explosive economic growth and our rapid descent toward comparative poverty and irrelevance, green though that pathway may be argued, however falsely to be. Carney, to put it bluntly, is not a man like Justin Trudeau, a second-rater, under the mere influence of the World Economic Forum, that Malthusian fear-mongering cabal of authoritarian elitists, drunk on the fumes of their own self-righteous delusions. He is, by contrast, a veritable leader of that movement.
That sums it up right there. Jordan Peterson hitting that nail on the head. As Cat Canada says here, anything he says about Canadian energy is just lies to get elected. He nearly bankrupted the UK with his bankster policies, and he will destroy Canada as well. Moving over to something like this, we got Brookfield leading the race to acquire $10 billion Colonial Pipeline. This is in America. So American Pipeline here, see, America's energy lifeline. They're looking to acquire a network covering more than 5,500 miles from Houston to New Jersey. The company is owned by a subsidiary, a private equity firm. Now, Mark Carney's not a part of Brookfield Asset Management anymore. Do you think this deal was in the works a couple months ago when he was chair? Probably. Regardless, it doesn't matter. We got articles like this where Brookfield bought $10 billion, says Abu Dhabi sold $10 billion stake in natural gas pipelines to a group of 6 investors, including global infrastructure partners Brookfield Asset Management. So not the eco-green utopia that they claim to be. And we've got articles like this. Brookfield significantly underreporting carbon emissions, report says. This is absurd. Citing data from private equity climate risks, says the investments of Canada's largest private equity investor, Brookfield Asset Management, emits over 13 times more than what Brookfield discloses in its most recent sustainability report. So this article is from 2013. So Mark Carney was chair of Brookfield at this time, and yet we've got to do net zero. These guys are the eco-green knights of the future. I mean, do I have to bring up the violation tracker here? Mark Carney chairing the company that had hazardous waste violation among all these other ones, air pollution, etc., etc. I showed this in the previous video. Do these guys really seem like they care about the environment when they have environmental violations? Let's just check how many they have. 16 environmental violations in 4 years. And that's just the environmental ones, as you can see here. That doesn't include the hazardous waste violation, because everyone likes that. With all those environmental violations in mind, are you buying what Carney's selling?
Time is running out to make this transition to net zero, to have a sustainable world. We need to transition the energy system on the scale of the Industrial Revolution at the speed of the digital transformation. In order to do that, we're going to need a fundamental transformation, really a revolution in the financial system. And I'd say that revolution started really in earnest with COP26. 2 years ago, only $5 trillion in the financial system was explicitly committed to net zero. That number grew to $130 trillion. That's 40% of global financial assets. Global financial institutions can play a number of roles to help economies in the transition. First, the most obvious is to get money, to get capital to those companies that have plans to get their emissions down. And so part of that is, I'd say, the easy bit, which is to build new renewable power, wind, solar, soon at great scale hydrogen, also hydroelectric, and in some cases nuclear.
By all means, Carney, invent the new power source and everyone will change over. But until it exists, Stop forcing this on people. Pierre Poilievre's plan is brilliant. He'll give incentives to businesses that cut their emissions, but not penalize companies if they don't. Right, we go over to this one here, gfanszero.com, this Mark Carney's website. It says here, World Bank Group President Ajay Banga and GFAN's co-chair UN Special Envoy for Climate Change and Finance Mark Carney and senior representatives, blah, blah, blah. These guys work together. That doesn't mean they necessarily have been doing dirty deals. We don't know. But the door is open when $41 billion are unaccounted for at the World Bank. This is hiding a paper trail. This seems incredibly suspicious. This is not like $1,000 or $1 million bucks. This is $41 billion. Climate Finance Unchecked alleges that poor record-keeping practices at the World Bank make it impossible to verify its expenditures and impact on climate finance. This is absolutely absurd. Briefly, we're going to take a look at these investments at the World Bank. As you can see here, ones like this managing social impacts of climate change and low carbon transition in South Africa. Why would we spend money on net zero in Africa? $2.5 million. You can see here environmental sustainability, Government of South Africa for a Just Energy Transition Partnership, which aims to transition to low carbon economy, etc., for climate change. And there's a bunch of them here. There's another one, Social Impacts, Climate Change South Africa. Not all of these are for net zero, but that's the point of this. There's no paper trail, so all of this money could have gone to net zero. When it comes down to it, scrolling through, the bulk of this has gone to net zero because this one here, $1 billion Climate Investment Funds Accelerating Coal Transition Investment Program. This is another net zero one. Food Systems for Climate Change Adaptation, support for climate change finance. Now these are reconstruction funds for net zero, rebuilding countries, but only in a certain manner. That was just page 1. Page 2, we got accelerating sustainable private public investment for infrastructural renewal. There's a bunch of them, one here, one here, one here. Supporting the facility for investment climate advisory services. Regardless of the amount of money that has gone to this, all of this money that goes to the World Bank, we have no idea if any of this actually went to any of these programs, whether it is climate change or Kenya extractives enabling environment, effective governance of mining and gas impacts, transparency for extractive sector, micro, small, and medium enterprise technical assistance facility. We don't know if any of these projects got any of this money because of the shoddy records at the World Bank.
But the more complex part is finding those companies in industries that have high emissions. Think of the steel industry, aviation, much of manufacturing, and finding those companies that have plans, that have to make big investments to get those emissions down. To put a number around it, it's an extra $2.5 to $3 trillion a year of additional finance that we have to find in order to get those emissions down. But that's not all that finance can do. What finance has to do as well is to provide capital for the adaptation of our economies. We need to build more resilient infrastructure for the more extreme weather that we are already experiencing. And the tragic fact is that we are going to experience more droughts, more hurricanes, more extreme weather, and more damage. So we need to invest in that resiliency. And we need to provide better safety nets for people around the world and very much in the emerging and developing economies. Many of those
safety nets, yeah, right. These guys, they're unbelievable. They think they run the world. They're going to fly around their gas-guzzling jets, but tell everyone to walk.
Those who are most vulnerable have no financial protection when the most damaging aspects of climate change hit, and we need to do a much better job of providing that support, that coverage to help literally protect people.
He wants them to have solar panels while the rest of us use oil and gas and have our economies booming. Well, not Canada anymore, but other nations like America whose economy is booming because of oil and gas.
The most effective policies for accelerating emissions reductions are those policies that are very clear and provide certainty and incentives for businesses and for financial institutions to act. In Canada, there's a carbon price, and it is legislated. At the end of this decade, that carbon price is $170 per ton. The carbon price today in Canada is $50 a ton. But financial institutions and businesses know that if they take action today, they're saving that cost, because that's the decisive point. In Europe, there are a series of moratoriums on the sale of new internal combustion engine vehicles. In some cases 2030, in other cases 2035.
Listen to that. So he's been talking about the direction Europe has been moving, the UK. He's referring exactly to this kind of stuff. Do we really believe this guy's going to get rid of the carbon tax? No chance. Sure, he'll jack it up on industry. He's going to bring it back on people one way or another.
And so that's part of the reason why we're seeing so much activity in the auto industry today to transform to produce only electric vehicles. So these deep decarbonization policies that at a date certain in the future tell industry, tell finance, tell all of stakeholders where countries are going to go, they provide the incentive to act today.
This is an absolute clown show where we've got Tesla being the largest electric vehicle company in the world. And because he's found wasteful spending in the American government, now the left are melting down against him, both America and in Canada. How does this make any sense? Shouldn't they be supporting Tesla vehicles because Mark Carney's net zero green agenda? You can't even rationalize what goes through people's minds. They're going after people with Cybertrucks. I thought they're doing their part to save the planet. Now they're evil? These people don't make sense at all. Canada's being asked to sacrifice itself, plain and simple, and I mean its existence.
Because Tesla sucks everywhere.
Oh, well, it did suck 2 years ago when everyone was big fans of it. They loved driving Teslas. Everyone was pushing for Teslas. Now all of a sudden it's not good.
You know what?
They were bringing in the e-revolution. There was EVs. Everyone loved Tesla. And all of a sudden you don't like them anymore
Because he's now.
because they like Trump.
This is despicable, so I have to blur out this stuff, but they have the funny mustache man from WW2 symbol on these signs. These people are disgraceful.
Hoping to accomplish.
To send a message to Tesla, their stockholders, their potential customers, that this is bad. People do not want
What
to be
is
supported.
bad?
What is bad?
Yes.
What is bad?
Yes.
What is Elon Musk doing that is bad?
Sure, go ahead.
Doge?
Doge is bad. How is Doge bad?
Horrible.
How?
Doge is horrible.
Because it cut off USAID funding?
There's that. There's that.
They can't even answer the question. They don't know why they're out there protesting. These people are bumbling buffoons. The question is now, does Mark Carney's G-Fans company have any involvement in that money? Were they a part of that? And what are Mark Carney's financial interests? That's why this is so important. And considering the guy's a banker, I'm sure he's got a lot of stocks, probably all over the place, international stocks, not just local stocks. I'm guessing he doesn't even have that many local companies he invests in Canada aside from Brookfield. Either way, Polyev just came out with his, showed exactly what he was invested in, and he sold it all. I said it before, I'll say it again. Mark Carney has to come out with his holdings, his financial investments. We need to know what he's invested in and what his conflicts of interest could be. He says he doesn't have any. Show them. So we're sitting here on the Brookfield Asset Management portfolio holdings. In a previous video, I was talking about Brookfield and their relationship with Trane and how Trane puts in the HVAC, the heat pumps, all that stuff, which Justin Trudeau heavily pushed with his free program. And Mark Carney's former company here, Brookfield, would put in the solar installations and all that kind of stuff. They'd work together. Well, it turns out Brookfield does own a chunk of Trane right here, TT Trane Technologies. So they own $1.45 million or 2.74% of the company. I want to jump back to the stock market here. So just so everyone can see, this is Trane Technologies here, the heat pump company. If we look at the timeline here, right here, you can see November 2023. This is when Justin Trudeau made the announcement for free heat pumps. And you can see the stock just completely exploded. Well, I was looking at the stocks here. This is very suspicious that you would have these rise and falls, rise and falls, rise and falls. Just a complete guess, not based on any sort of fact. But what if Justin Trudeau told the other liberals around here a few months earlier in July, hey, we're going to be doing this heat pump program coming up. You should buy some stock in some heat pumps. And a bunch of liberals buy. Now, the people who are already holding this, maybe they bought back here and then they saw this rise and then it crashed. They're like, oh, crap, I should have sold it at the top. Maybe this rises up and they're like, oh, time to dump some shares. And more liberals buy. And more people dump shares. And more liberals buy. And more people dump shares. And more liberals buy. And more people who aren't in the government sell more shares. Trudeau announces it, kaboom. So just digging into this, Canadian politicians can buy stocks, but they're held to rules that don't involve conflict of interest. Same thing goes for their spouse. So technically, if an MP or minister bought these stocks, they knew it was going to go up because of an announcement. It would be a conflict of interest, insider trading. They should be charged. But as we've seen with all the scandals, these people never get charged. Same thing goes if someone tells their spouse, but if their spouse, say, tells their mother, hey, go buy some stocks in Trane, they don't tell anyone, is this really traceable? Is someone going to know to look there? No, they're not. Considering the amount of scandals we've seen, is this really out of the realm of possibility? I mean, look at the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been uncovered, like an STTC scandal, Arrive scam, Cycle Capital, all these ones. We Charity, SNC Lavalin, we can go on and on. So really, I think every single politician and their spouse needs to be investigated. Their platforms need to be opened up, whatever their stock trading platforms are, and they need to look at all of their trades. Because this is easy money. These rich money bags put $1 million or $2 million in there, and a matter of November until November, in 1 year, double your money. And even if you sold it anywhere along the way, they could turn $2 million into 4, and they're laughing. Well, that's a big rabbit hole. But the main takeaway here is, why is $3.448 billion going to the World Bank where that money can't be traced, who it's going to, what it's being used for, or even what country is going to? That could have been one of Mark Carney's companies, whether it was Brookfield or GFANZ. It could have been a payout to someone for giving that money. Side note again, where's Justin Trudeau again? Oh yeah, no one's seen him in 2 weeks. When our country is struggling in so many aspects, whether it's healthcare, security, the border, our military, it seems highly corrupt that $3.44 billion is given away, and we have no idea what we got in return.